The Club Championship Show on OTB in partnership with AIB, proud sponsors of the Football, Hurling and Camogie All-Ireland Club Championships. Hashtag the toughest.
Welcome back to the Club Championship Show here on OTB Sports, which is brought to you by AIB. An intriguing weekend last weekend. Pádraic Mahony just at 13 points for the reigning All-Ireland champions Ballygunner. They won a thrilling game against Na Piarsaigh to set up what's going to be a very interesting Munster final against the Clare champions Ballyer on Saturday week in Thurles. The beaten finalists of last year in the hurling, Ballyhale Shamrocks, continue their bid for a fourth consecutive Leinster crown when they take on Naas, who won the All-Ireland Intermediate Championship last year in the semi-finals at Croke Park this Sunday. The All-Ireland football kingpins, Kilcoo, are also in action this coming weekend with semi-finals in both Ulster and Munster in the football. St Vincent's are the new Leinster Senior Camogie champions following their victory against the 2020 All-Ireland champions Oulart the Bala. Cahair O'Kane of the Irish News and the Irish Examiner's John Fogarty will be with us in a little bit, but Aisling O'Reilly is here with me. How are you getting on, Ash?
Good, Will, not too bad. How are you?
We're getting into this real business end of the Club Championship now as we return with the show. Provincial semi-finals across the board. We've got the first final fixtures confirmed over the next couple of weeks. Got that kind of feeling of really important silverware is going to be handed out over the next couple.
It does, absolutely, and some brilliant games. You know, the Ballygunner Na Piarsaigh game in particular was just something else. I think it was one of the classic club games, and I think we needed that as well. You know, I think it's got the excitement going as we come into the business end of things. And yeah, just really looking forward to it. I know we could probably see maybe Kilcoo coming up against Glen if they come through their games as well. That's an exciting one. And yeah, as well, the Leinster Camogie, that was some result for Vincent. So yeah, loads of great stories in there, and yeah, it's just getting exciting now.
Yeah, I enjoy kind of tracking the stories as we go along too. We'll talk a little bit later about Europe in Croke Park the weekend just gone by,
yep,
and the Downs into a first Leinster final in 50 years. We're looking at Tour Strand from Sligo into their first Connacht final in 40 years. It's like, I think that's one of the great things about the Club Championship is what this means to communities who've been away from the top table for a long, long time, and then the excitement building into Christmas, getting ready for provincial finals.
This is it, and it's massive for those clubs. You know, I spoke to the Downs after the game. I spoke with Lara, their manager, and to Luke Loughlin as well. And, you know, it's unbelievable. I think it was 16 years, 17 years since they won the Westmeath Championship, and then 50 years now since they were last in the Leinster final. So for those clubs to probably be hearing these stories growing up, to now be the ones that they're here contesting, hopefully going to make history of their own. You know, that's what the Club Championship is all about. And, you know, obviously my own club, Ratoath, were there contesting at the weekend. Brilliant to see them in Croke Park for the very first time, and you know that's going to stick in our club for a very long time. You know, a lot of the kids went in on the bus, you know, with the team, and you know they have that belief now. They've seen it being possible to be in Croke Park with your club. So it's about all those stories, Will, and I think in particular this year we're hearing them, and it's great because it really does push on the Club Championship. Because I know we've some of the kingpins are in there. You know, we have the likes of Kilcoo, we have Ballygunner, Ballyhale, all these big names that are around the club for so long. But it's nice when you see maybe the underdogs coming up, and who knows, this year it could be the year of an underdog.
We'll see if they can spring a shock or two along the way. We've got John Fogarty from the Irish Examiner with us as well. Good morning, John. How are you getting on?
Will, good morning to you. Good morning, Aisling.
Good morning, John.
We're going to kick off with Ballygunner as we look back on those Munster semi-finals from last weekend. That second half performance, John, is that as complete a display as we've seen from a team, the way they played against Na Piarsaigh in the second half last weekend?
If it isn't, it's very close, Will. It was dramatic in many ways because in the first half, they were the poorer team. There's no denying that. The goal almost came against the run of play in that sense. But in the second half, they were like a horde of Dennis the Menaces in that jersey. You know, they were just frenetic. It was incredible. Just their hunger. Like, they looked porous in the first half. The running from the Piarsaigh, especially at that half back line, two of which are in their 30s now, and they did look their age at that time. And then in the second half, they just turned it around completely. Shane O'Sullivan gave another dramatic performance, just like he did in the All-Ireland final this year. So it was hugely impressive, but there's a great maturity to this group, Will, this Ballygunner side. I don't think they panic in any shape or form, and it's a sign of a great team. We see it from Limerick at intercounty level, but we're seeing it massively from this Ballygunner team. They're not used to it. A few of them repeated it. They're not used to going into half-time 5 points behind, but it was almost as if it was a new challenge for them, and boy, did they embrace it.
Yeah, I mean, look, not the fact they run up a very good total in the end, 2 goals and 20 points, but to keep the Limerick champions to just 4 scores in the second half is remarkable in and of itself.
It is indeed. Like, obviously, Kevin Downs had a couple of wides as well from frees in the second half, but that doesn't take away from the fact that they kept an incredibly decent team in the Piarsaigh to 4 points like they did. It was It just seemed as if they turned up their hunger. I don't think it was anything tactically. Obviously, from their puckouts, Stephen O'Keefe, let's be honest, he should be playing inter-county because he is that good. But what has been Waterford's loss has certainly been Ballygunner's gain, in the sense that he's been able to commit to it. The word is he's heavily involved in the tactical decisions, along with Pádraig Mahony, along with Darragh Sullivan and David Franks, the coach. And you could see how much, it was affected, and the Pearship clearly did their homework on it in the first half, but O'Keefe's ability to vary his puck out like he did, but also, you can see it from the replays that they manifested a lot of those attacks from short ones. So he is such an impressive player for them, and it's my belief anyway that himself and Philip Mahoney, these guys probably retired or stepped away from inter-county hurling earlier than they should have. Obviously, they made the right decisions for themselves, but it's been a huge advantage to Ballygunner. Obviously, Pádraig Mahony, we will wait and see what Pádraig's decision is. Clearly, as we saw at the weekend, he has a hell of a lot to offer for Waterford, but again, it's up to his decision, up to him, and it's up to it's up to everybody else to keep up with this group. Bally have some challenge on their hands on Saturday week.
And John, you mentioned there the Ballygunner, they didn't panic and they showed their experience. I think especially in the opening few minutes, na Piarsaigh, they were getting bodies back. They were, marking Desi Hutchison out of the game. They weren't letting him on the ball. And I think that was a crucial point that Ballygunner, they noticed that and they changed things.
They did. They obviously, Pádraig Mahony then was dropping deep, Aisling, and guys who were basically winning the dirty ball and whatever, Pádraig was offloading to them. Obviously, there will be questions for the Pearshig in that. Why did they give Pádraig that license to ghost like he did? But obviously they could go route one as well in the second half. The Patrick Fitzgerald's goal was route one with the ball that was put into him. But they just have everything in their locker. That's what the way it seems at the moment. And the great thing about them, I was speaking to the McGrath brothers from Mount Sion, Ken and Owen last week, and the point that they made is that they're very difficult to hate. In the sense, like Mount Sion should hate them because obviously they're now matching them for 9 titles in a row in Waterford and things like that. But these guys are humble. They're humble outfit. They're putting a hell of a lot back into their underage. A lot of the senior players, very much like Napirshick, are training their underage teams, and obviously they're reaping the benefits of that. There's guys there who would have been in cool camps and whatnot, who are now playing with the guys who would have coached them at that stage. So it's basically feeding into itself every time, and it doesn't look like it's going to stop anytime soon.
Yeah, it was interesting. We were chatting to Stephen O'Keefe ahead of the All-Ireland final last year, and he was very keen to stress that we were looking at the teams who had got to Munster finals, John, and he was saying, hey, look, there's lads here who have only been on the panel the last year, 2 years. To them, they've known nothing but winning, whether it be Munster championships or running off the Waterfords in a row. And he was saying that's probably no bad thing, that they weren't carrying any of the emotional scarring of the defeats that they'd taken in provincial finals in recent years.
Very much so, Will. Like, there's 2 generations here. It's almost like the Dubs and the Kieran Whelan time, and post Kieran Whelan. Like, Kieran Whelan, one of the greatest footballers that Dublin ever had, and he didn't. He has no All Ireland to his name. Whereas there's guys, perhaps inferior footballers, who have a couple of medals to their names, and Kieran doesn't. In many ways, Ballygunner have Fergal Hartley, Paul Flynn, guys like that who really strove and really looked for Munster titles and basically didn't have the same success as this group. Now, I think a huge, and Peter Hogan touched on it speaking after the game on Sunday, that winning in All Ireland like they did against Ballyhale Shamrocks in February gone was a huge fill-up for them. Like, something like that happens and you think you can take on the world, and these guys like Harry Ruddle, Harry's not even getting his game at the moment. Billy O'Keefe's on the bench there at the moment. 2 guys who you would argue would probably get onto a lot of teams, and they have those guys in reserve. But their confidence is just exuding. It's really impressive. As I said to you, Ballyea, they're going to be a different prospect, you would imagine, in Thurles on Saturday week, because Tony Kelly's there. Obviously, he went for surgery last year when these 2 locked horns, and obviously Ballygunner had it all their own way. But there's almost something very irresistible about this Ballygunner group at the moment, and I think Darragh Sullivan touched on it at the weekend, that beating a team as vaunted and as good as Napirshick is only going to propel them even more.
Yeah, seems the break didn't seem to bother them too much either, John. It's been talked about a lot in some of the teams that were knocked out in recent weeks, but they had a long delay from the end of the Waterford Championship to playing Kilcoo in the first round of Munster and now this game. And yet they don't seem to have really lost a beat despite the fact they hadn't hurled competitively for a couple of months.
Yeah, it was a big concern for them, Will, last year. I remember talking to Darragh Sullivan at the time before the Ballygunner game that they were going into the unknown. They didn't know how they were going to bridge this gap or whether there were, there was going to be a bit of rustiness. Obviously there wasn't, and there wasn't when they beat Kilcoo. McDonough's there a couple of weeks ago as well. I think the fact that a lot of them go and play football with Gaultier out in Dunmore, that basically keeps the fitness up. So it's basically a case of, I think they started 3 or 4 weeks from the Kilcoo game, and they were able to, taper it up and go like they did. Obviously, there's comparisons being made now to the likes of Ferns and Wexford, who obviously were the second Wexford champions to be knocked out at the first time of Askin and Leinster after they've had such a long break from August. There are going to be questions like that asked, but this Ballygunner team, I think they're the exception to the rule. Where a lot of teams will be looking at them and wanted to replicate what they do, but this is years in the making, as so many of the guys in Ballygunner will tell you. The older guys, they got a lot of houndings down through the years. They got a lot of scutchings, as they might say, a lot of defeats, and they learned the hard way, and they learned by investing in their underage, which is obviously they're reaping the benefits now.
Yeah, we spent some time down in their club last year. Brilliant facilities, and just the way Desi spoke about the club and a lot of the young kids, he's like a celebrity there. It's so funny, like they're all running up to him on the pitch, and he's their club player, and it's magic to see that. But as you said, John, they do face Ballyhay. So what can we expect here? Obviously they met in the quarter-final last year, but there was no Tony Kelly last year. It was 320 to 2-6 in the end, but I think it might be a little bit different this time around.
It has to be for that reason, Aisling, but also for the fact that you saw Gary Brennan at the weekend, man of the match. Another guy who some people might say has retired too early, certainly from Clare football, but you can see the quality of the man there. I'm really looking forward to him and Barry Coughlin locking horns like they were. That should be tasty enough. You would imagine that coming through a game, as it was ugly. Let's be honest with you, the Finbars game was ugly, but obviously the conditions, the pitch, you had to see the Gaelic Grounds pitch to believe it. They put a lot of work into it recently, and it's pristine. It's a gorgeous. There was no excuses for bad hurling there, even in November last Sunday. Whereas the Cusack Park pitch looked like a pitch, for November, as good as it is. Semple Stadium, on Saturday week, there will be no excuses again. You would imagine it'll be indecent nick. But I can't see anything other than a Ballygunner victory at this moment in time. Like Ballyhay have fought the odds before. They will embrace it in many ways, and the fact that Kelly is back at like he is will be a huge bonus to them. But I don't think we can underestimate how much that victory over the Piercing is going to bring this Ballygunner group on. I think it's just reaffirmed what they already knew about themselves, that they are the team to beat. Maybe
the biggest surprise of the weekend when it came to Ballyhay's victory against the Bars was the fact it wasn't Tony Kelly who puts over the winning score. Perhaps an unlikely hero in Brandon O'Connell. I think he's back in with the Clare Senior Hurling panel, but a guy who's generally known for stopping the opposition as opposed to going up for a winning score. An unlikely enough hero in the end.
Yeah, and they might need that because it's not the Ballygunner way really to man mark. So, very much like Pádraig Mahoney was ghosting around the half-forward line on Sunday. I think there will be an allowance, but it'll be a case of, Tony's going to do what Tony's going to do, and it's just a case of damage limitation. I don't think Ballygunner are going to sacrifice their shape in any way for Ballyhay, but at the same time, you're absolutely right. Well, they will need guys to step up. Different guys, they do have. Listen, they're two-time Clare champions, back to back, which isn't the, 6 Mile Bridge have done it obviously in the last couple of years, but it's not a regular feat. And Ballyhay have shown before that when they have Tony Kelly in tow, that they can embrace the challenge of a Munster championship. But they're facing monsters. They really are facing monsters in this game in terms.
Yeah, Tony Kelly last week, he said that we won't be given a chance, but he said that he's back this year. They have the likes of Carl Doohan is back from Australia, so they do have lads back in that they wouldn't have had last year. So I suppose that brings a little bit of an edge to it too.
It does. It does in many ways. And the fact that Tony, I would imagine, the way he's talking there, he's absolutely right. He's not playing. He's not. Listen, he's not playing the poor mouth in any shape or form. Ashling, they are going to be written off now. You know, I can tell you, I'm not writing them off. I'm just thinking that Ballygunner are going to win the game. Certainly not to the extent that they won last year. But Kelly will, you can imagine, will be in the ears of the guys. Adrian O'Brien, who's obviously now coaching, who had coached St. Finbarrs and Ballyea, and is now with the Clare Hurlers as their strength and conditioning coach. But obviously he's their hurling coach. They will have his undivided attention for this game now, so that gives another little bit of a boost to Ballyea. But Kelly is the type of guy who will get something out of being written off as much, and it will happen during next week. You can be sure of it. Most people will be talking it's an early juncture at this stage, Ashling, but you know, people are already starting to begin talking about Shamrocks and talking about Ballygunner and a repeat at an All-Ireland semi-final stage, whether it happens before Christmas or afterwards. Those fixtures aren't yet confirmed. It could still change. At this moment in time, it's before Christmas, but Ballygunner won't be getting ahead of themselves, and Tony Kelly, you would imagine, will love if they are, but they're just too professional. There's too many good guys in that group not to get for them to get ahead of themselves.
John, just one last one for you before you go. Obviously, a lot of discussion around the structures potentially going into next year. Wexford last night voted to stick with the status quo, so they're going to have a split season effectively within their own county championship. They're going to stick with the hurling first and the football afterwards. I mean, other counties are going to be debating this over the next while, and maybe the idea of regional competitions coming in, all these changes since the overall split season came in. But Wexford are sticking with the same system for next season.
They are, and from just talking to a couple of people last night, as late as it was, Will, it was a bone of contention for a few clubs who now believe that they're hamstrung in the sense that if they win the hurling championship, they're going to have a wait even longer than the one that Ballygunner obviously bridged against Kilcoo a couple of weeks ago. The fact, it's a great product that Wexford have. The fact that it's undivided, the fact that the hurling championship is week on week. At the height of the summer, let's be honest, you know, around August time, and July, it's a huge selling. It's a huge sell for them. But in the sense of propelling them into the Leinster Championship, there's no platform there now, and it is a concern. The fact that the last two champions have been knocked out as early as they have, mind you, St. Mullins, who beat Fern St. Aidan's the last time, were waiting a week later. I think they're waiting 12 or 13 weeks. So I don't think you can blame that necessarily, that gap necessarily for that defeat. But it is something that is going to come up again, I would imagine, every year at this stage in Wexford now. It was obviously replicated in Waterford and Carlow. People saw what Wexford have done and believe it's the right way to go. But, you know, we might see Wexford champions struggle in the next while when they get out of the county. The one thing that is said, and Micheál Martin, the Wexford chairman, has said it, Will, is that there's been a rise in the success of the dual teams. The amount of dual teams in Wexford at the moment are really benefiting from the fact that they can concentrate on hurling and then on football. Now, there might be an argument in the future to say, why can't we go football first and then hurling second? That could be something that they will look at. Obviously, the likes of Cork have alternate weekends, as do the likes of Tip as well. But it's Wexford have clearly made a vote for themselves in the sense that, you know, we're happy enough with our champion. But there will be, you would imagine, pressure on them, especially from the leading clubs over the next while, if they feel that they're struggling in Leinster, and that continues.
For sure. The debate continues. John, thanks a million.
Pleasure, guys.
John Fogarty there from the Irish Examiner brings up to speed on those Munster semi-finals from last weekend. You were at Croke Park asking for the Leinster Club Senior Football semis.
Yep.
We had two very contrasting games. Very comfortable victory for the defending champions Kilcoo Crokes against Port Arlington. 1-12 to 4 points in the end. Port Arlington didn't score until the 47th minute from play. They've been so close last year in their meeting that people were thinking maybe it might be a bit closer, but Port Arlington well beaten on the day. The first game was a thriller though. Your own club Rathouth, the Meath champions, up against the Downs, and a game that kind of swung in different directions. But if a late free goes in a different way, Rathouth could have taken that to extra time.
I know, and when it's your own club and you're sitting in Croke Park, it is very tough to watch on. I was on the edge of my seat. It was very different from, working there covering games, but it was 2-12 to 17 points in the end, and it was a draw at half time, and it was really Daithí McGowan for a tote that really kept them in the game in that first half. I think he scored 4 points in a row. Brilliant, an unbelievable player, about 18, 19 years of age. Definitely one to watch out for. But yeah, it was the Downs that came out on top, and they got a goal in the first half that probably made a big difference to the game, and they got one in the second as well. But they were just very impressive. Luke Loughlin in particular, his runs from the back line, he was lined out a corner forward, but he was down in the back line.
Action.
Yeah, he really was. And the amount of work he done, he would run from the back line, lay it off, and get on the end of the ball again to put it over or create the pass. So it wasn't only the scoring that he was doing, it was, the hard work off the ball that was just epic from him. And yeah, it's a great story for them. Obviously for my club, the first time ever in Croke Park. So they're an up-and-coming team, very young, and yeah, it's exciting times. It's hard to obviously get a loss by 1 point in Croke Park, and the lads will be really feeling it, but they have to be proud of themselves and what they done for the club. It was a brilliant day out for everybody, and yeah, we'll definitely be back. But for the Downs, exciting times. As we mentioned at the start, 50 years since they were last there. Yeah, lovely team. I met them afterwards, and yeah, they're very humble by it all. They're delighted to be here. But they know that they have a big task on their hands now with Kilmacud.
Yeah, I don't think anyone on their panel had made their confirmation the last time they'd won a Westmeath championship. There's nobody older than 28.
Wow, okay.
So I think Luke Loughlin is he's joint captain this year.
Yeah.
So he's also, I think, the oldest member of the panel. There's a team that won a series of underage titles in Westmeath. There's been they were the coming team. Mm-hmm. But the Downs continued to miss out in finals against St. Lomans, who've been the best team of the last decade. Then they got past Lomans this year, and the Downs really haven't looked back. Niall Mitchell, who confirmed he's staying with the Westmeath senior hurlers for next season as opposed to going with the football panel. He scored the second goal. Kieran Nolan got the first one. I think they should have been home and hosed until Andrew Kilmartin got sent off, and the next thing,
big time,
crazy things started happening, and Ratoath just kept on eating into that lead.
Yeah, now they were down to 14 men, but Ratoath started to play, because for that second half Ratoath had not played, and I think the lads would say that themselves, and that's probably the most disappointing thing, I'm sure, if you come away from Croke Park and say, oh, if we left everything out there, grand. But I think that in that first half in particular, the start of it, they didn't really play. It was the last 15 minutes or so, when the Downs were down to 14 men, that they got a bit more fire in the belly type of thing, and Jack Flynn was poking balls, from the sky, literally plucking even, and he was just unbelievable. And it all came down to the last free at the end. It was over by the sideline. It was very tricky, took it off the ground, and yeah, it just didn't happen for him. But yeah, as you said, we thought they were home and host, at that point, but it was that sending off. And it was funny with that sending off, I don't think the referee remembered he had given the first yellow at that instant. Would it have been a second yellow, would you think? I don't know. Obviously it was a yellow, but
I think Kilmartin knew exactly what he was doing. I think at that point they were, 5 up, and he's thinking,
yeah,
I'm taking a yellow card. They might kick this free, and my teammates will take care of the next 3 minutes.
Oh God, I don't know. Jeez, I think he put them under a lot of pressure at that point. Thankfully, for him, they held on. Again, bring up Luke again, but it was him that was holding the ball. He was managing the play. He was looking at the clock. He was really, really showing his experience at that point. And they needed players like that. And yeah, Ratoath just couldn't get the score in the end, because I thought it was going to extra time. And I was like, I can't take this. My heart.
The Downs unbeaten this year. They won both the league and championship in Westmeath. Luke Loughlin kicking 5 points in his player of the game performance at the weekend. And he spoke to Ash after the game.
Squeaky bum time there the last few minutes, but just so happy. I'm kind of lost for words, which is a shock, I'd say, to some people, but I'm trying to just take it all in at the minute. But I'm just so happy. It's been such a great year, and you can get used to winning, to be honest. Haven't lost a game now in a while, so hopefully it keeps going like that.
It's some journey for you this year, especially. I know you've talked about it quite a lot now. It's been documented, and it's brilliant to see. The Tailteann Cup, obviously, and now you're here in a Leinster final. Just talk to me about your performance out there. Obviously, in those last few minutes, you were right down in the back line. You were in the corner at one stage trying to hold the ball. You were looking probably up at the time and hoping the clock would hurry up.
Yeah, lucky enough to kick a few points and contribute. I missed a goal chance to get in for another one, but credit to Lar. He's kind of instilled a mindset in us to never give up, and we really do. Before, just kind of that journey, my head would go down, and that's just a testament to the way things are going in my life, but just never giving up, and that's what we were missing with Lar. And great man, I'd say now I've given him a lot of praise the last few months now. He's getting sick of it, but he was a missing piece for us, and just another step in our journey. Hopefully now another big day out in 2 weeks.
And you were down to 14 men for the last about 10 minutes or so. Talk to me about that.
Definitely, but same thing, like we're ready for everything. Anything can happen in football. To be honest, when that free there at the end, I was ready for him to kick it over and just get ready for extra time. So kind of hope for the best, hope for the best and expect the worst. And that's kind of the way we were, ready for extra time. But luckily enough, we got a bit of luck after having a torrid last 10 minutes. So just happy enough he missed. I know it's not nice to say about someone missing but that's sport. I've missed plenty of them. Everyone has missed them, loads of them. So just happy enough to get over the line,
Luke mixing his metaphors a little bit towards the end there. But
I couldn't even help him out at that point. I was shook as well. But it's some journey for Luke. Like, I knew Luke in New York. He would have played out there for Cavan in New York, and an epic player, a great hurler, brilliant hurler as well. And yeah, we had some good times out there, and that was the first time now I'd seen him since. And yeah, it's some journey that he's been on. I know he's been on OTB AM as well, speaking about it. And yeah, what a year it's been for him. Unbelievable Talton Cup as well. So yeah, he's looking forward to Leinster final now too.
Yeah, I mean, it's a remarkable turnaround. 1 year after you went into Coonvera, won the Talton Cup this summer with Westmeath. And then even with the Downs, it was 6 days after they had lost a county final with Clonkill, himself and Niall Mitchell, and they turn around with their club and win the county football final the next week. And here he is now. So going back to Croke Park for a fourth game of the year, because they would have played a semi-final in the Talton there as well.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's been a remarkable year for them. We mentioned earlier on as well the Leinster Camogie final. You were keeping an eye on that on Sunday afternoon. I'll admit, I thought Oulart, even with some of their players being away and the fact that Ursula Jacobs not there after she's had a child, and maybe they're not quite where they were in 2020 and 2021, they still won their semi-final very convincingly against Birr the week before. And I thought they were going to have a bit too much for St Vincent's, but it's the Dublin champions who come out on top.
Yeah, great for Vincent. They're a great team there, great experience in there, especially the likes of Aisling Maher. She was epic as always. But it was a good game, really good game. And Oulart just didn't have enough in the end. I thought that they were maybe going to pull out a draw, but it didn't happen for them. But as you said, it was probably that experience there with Oulart. Like, they were missing, as you said, Ursula. But they did have the likes of Mary Lacey as well in there. They have that experienced players that they've been there, they've done it. They're a well-known camogie club across the country, and it was nice for Vincent, but they just had too much in the end. The likes of Niamh Heatherton, she got the goal. A lot of people know Niamh for the Dublin footballers. A brilliant dual player, so they had too much in the end, but it was a great game. And yeah, Vincent's well deserving of their win in the end. I think Oulart probably think they left it behind them, but I think they'll no doubt be back, because they have such talent within that squad, Will.
Yeah, new contender emerges there. Just the results from the weekend. We were already talking about the Munster senior hurling semi-finals with John, but Ballygunner winning against Na Piarsaigh by 220 to 2 goals and 15. Ballyea getting out by a single point against St Finbarrs. Finbarrs did have a chance with a very late 65, which could have sent it to extra time, a bit like the football game we were talking about. But Ballyea, in the end, coming through by 112 to 14 points. And Brandon O'Connell with the winning score there. Ben Cunningham scoring 9 points for St Finbarrs. With 13 points for Porkmanny for Ballygunner. In the Ulster Club Senior Hurling Championship, first of the semi-finals, Slaughtneil of Derry still on course potentially to win 5 out of 6 in the hurling, which, when you put all their football success together as well, their provincial record since 2015 is just insane.
For such a small club.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And then you add in the Camogie, who are on the run again. It's just amazing how they continue to keep winning and winning. But Brian Cassidy and Jerome McGuigan getting the goals for the Derry champions there, running out 19-point winners, 224 to 11 points. We had a Galway Senior Hurling Championship final between St Thomas's and Loughrea. St Thomas's have been the team to beat. They were going for 5 in a row here. But Loughrea led at various different stages in this game. They were ahead at half time. They were ahead with 42 minutes gone in the game, but it needed a very late score from Tiernan Killeen to get it an equaliser for Loughrea. So they've got a very quick turnaround. They're back out in Salt Hill this coming weekend for the Galway Senior Hurling Championship replay. We had the football semi-finals in Connacht. Turlestran of Sligo into their first final since 1982. Was a big second half performance from them. They were down by 4 points at the break, 6 points to 2, but St Mary's of Leitrim, who had their dramatic win in London a couple of weeks ago, didn't score in the second half at Carrick-on-Shannon, and it was Turlestran who came through by 8 points to 6 in the end. Moy Cullen against Strokestown. Moy Cullen had already accounted for Westport in the first round, but it was the Galway champions who came through after extra time against the Roscommon champions for the first time in 16 seasons. Moy Cullen getting goals from Gerard Davrin and also from county player Sean Kelly in extra time as they came through by 2-8 to 7 points. So that final in a couple of weeks would be Moy Cullen of Galway against Tourlestrane of Sligo. We mentioned the Leinster Club Senior Football semis. The Downs of Westmeath, for the first time in 50 years since they were well beaten by Vincent's back in 1972. It was the Downs who beat Radoth by 2-12 to 17 points. And Kilmacud Crokes, very impressive. No Paul Mannion, injured, probably out for most of the rest of the season with that knee injury. Shane Walsh had a virus. The Kilmacud coaching team were saying afterwards they took him off as a precaution with 15 minutes to go. He had scored 3 points in the game. Kilmacud coming through against Port Arlington of Laois by 12 points to 4. 47 minutes it took for Port Arlington to score from play in the game, which was a stark contrast to the big scores they put up in Wexford and against Palatine in the previous rounds. And as Ash mentioned, Leinster Club Camogie final, St Vincent's 1-9. Out the Bala 11 points. So a really, really important weekend. We're going to talk about the Ulster football semi-finals now. Cahair O'Kane is with us as well. Cahair, how are you getting on? Welcome back.
Not too bad. Well, hi Steve, how's things?
Hi Cahair, how are you?
I know Ash, you're excited about this weekend too. I mean, we get a chance to see Kilmacud have clearly underlined their potential here, not just for Leinster but for the All-Ireland. We saw Kilcoo very impressive against Ballybay in the last round of Monaghan, and we get to see Kilcoo again this weekend. Absolutely,
yeah, I know. I'd say Cahair is looking forward to it very much so. Kilcoo, I think they're peaking around now, and I think that's how they work their season, is to peak now. And against Ballybay, that was probably the best that I had seen them. I've seen them through the club championship quite a bit as well, and they've had very tough games to get out of there. In particular, Clonduff in the quarter final went to extra time and penalties. Clonduff will be really hurting over that one, and again then in the final with Warren Point, and that went extra time as well. So they really get themselves ready for this Ulster Championship, playing in the Down Championship, because you know, even last year they have some of their toughest games in the Down Championship. So yeah, we're seeing the best of them now at the minute, and yeah, it's very exciting times. And obviously have Glen as well at the other side of things. So two very exciting teams.
You want a Glen against Kilcoo final, don't you?
I would love to see it. I think Glen would love to get one over Kilcoo after last year. They're two teams that match well. They're quite different in contrast. Glen are quite a big team. Kilcoo will be seen maybe a bit of a smaller team, but that was the talk last year, and look what happened in the end. You know, Kilcoo came out on top, but not to write any of the other teams off, you know, either. There's some great teams in there. Enniskillen and Gales, first time they're going to be in the, I think since maybe 16 years or something like that. Carter would know better than me. And as well, we've Carrigan of Antrim, so not to write them off at all. But I suppose the two big names are always Glen and Kilcoo, aren't they? And to see them coming up against each other would be epic. But they've 2 games to go, so yeah, we'll not write them off.
Athletic Grounds, 6 p.m. this coming Saturday. Enniskillen and Gales of Fermanagh up against Kilcoo of Down. Cara, what has your read been on Kilcoo so far, Ash, since she's been very impressed with some of the battles they've come through this year already?
Yeah, no, there will be nothing unusual about them, as Aisling said, nothing unusual about them getting it very tight coming out of Down. Years, I suppose people judge their potential in terms of Ulster club up until they won it a couple of years ago, and then went on won the Ireland again the following time. But up until they had won it, people judged them on how they did in Down, and oftentimes there was no read on it because they struggled to get out of Down, and then maybe it went well in Ulster, or years they came out of Down handy and did poorly in Ulster. So it's been a tough championship to read them off. They obviously had a bit of a break after they won the All Ireland. A lot of fellas went and got stuff off their chest during the year. Like Ryan Johnson spent a lot of the early part of the year travelling, was in America in the summer. Jerome Johnson, I think, was in America in the summer. Dylan Ward, Keelan Doherty were in America. You know, so I suppose they've maybe struggled to find their momentum up until they really needed it. And look, I still alluded to the quarter final against Clonduff, like going to penalties, could have very, very easily been gone that night. Could have been away from them, but as you say, they tend to get stronger as the thing warms up. And talking about a Glen Kilcoo final, like, you will do very, very well if you got into a car in Derry City and you drove the whole way to Newry and stopped in every town on the way through and asked somebody who would be in the Ulster Club final, nobody would tell you that it'll not be Glen and Kilcoo. So it is an enormous challenge for Enniskillen and Gales and Carrigan both. Kilcoo and Glen are seen as the teams that, you know, the teams to beat, if you like, the teams that will not be beaten this weekend, that kind of no matter what happens.
Enniskillen Gales, plenty of drama against Gowna of Cavan in the last round too. This was the one that went to penalties. It's a difficult way to get through to a semi-final, but they held their nerve on the spot kicks to come through.
Loads. I was at that game, and to be fair to them, I felt that Enniskillen Gales deserved to win that game over the 80 minutes. Gowna got 2 goals in the first half, came out on nothing. And we're only 2 points down at half time when the margin in terms of their play was closer to 7 or 8 points really. Gowna stuck in it well, and to be fair, from probably half time on, it was a bit more of an even game, even though Enniskillen Gales probably still slightly edged it. But the penalties, Enniskillen Gales penalties were right out of the top drawer. All 5 players and the goalkeeper all play soccer. That took them, and you could almost tell it was coming. There would be a big history of soccer in Enniskillen Town, and the fellas, it was almost all top corner stuff. It was, very unusually for Gaelic footballers that they were happy to go across themselves. Most fellas in that panic situation will just go, left-footed, you're going that side, right-footed, you're going that side. And Enniskillen were happy to open themselves up and go the other way, and they just had a wee bit of quality about them that the soccer came in useful. But look, they've had a great run. I was at their Fermanagh semi-final as well. They knocked out Derrygonnelly, who had been the Ulster club final last year, and thoroughly deserved to beat Derrygonnelly that day as well. They're a team that is full of pace, full of freshness, other than Richard O'Callaghan. There's nobody outside their mid-20s, but they're just carrying a few niggles and knocks. They're waiting on, not actually sure, did they take an appeal on to Croke Park? They lost their appeal to Ulster Council over Callum Jones's red card on Monday night, and he would be a big loss as well. Brandon Horns carrying a hamstring injury, be a big loss. And Owen Beacom hasn't started the last couple of games, so they need all 3. They really need all 3.
Right, you both have an inside track in this far more than me. How involved is Mickey Moran actually with this Kilcoo team? Because I thought he was gone. I thought this was underlined, new management team. Mickey had been so crucial to them win the All-Ireland, but they had broken away, and now we hear that Mickey Moran's back involved in some way.
Well, I had spoke with Conleth Gilligan, the manager at the moment. I spoke to him a few times just during the club championship, and he always said that Mickey was always there. He didn't really miss a game. He was always in the stands, and when you speak to any of the players, they say he's always around the place. And I've heard he's been in the dressing room and the like. So I think if you have someone like Mickey Moran who takes such a big interest in your team and has been there and has done it with them, of course you're gonna call on him and want his experience. And when he walks into a dressing room, like the lads have said time and time again, everyone shuts up. It's Mickey. You stop, you listen. I think he is still around, giving some words of wisdom, I'm sure. And if you can use someone like Mickey, I absolutely would. So that is the talk at the minute, that he is. Don't know if he's involved with training and stuff, no idea. But that he's around the games, definitely, yeah, he's been there. So they're definitely still using him. But Glen is his club, so yeah, you'd wonder if they did come head to head.
Recluse himself, a bit like what we saw earlier on in the Ulster Championship. It's an interesting decision by Conleth Gilligan there as well, Cara, to still have him around. I mean, you can still tap into that experience. You can tap into a man who the Kilcoo players were saying was so important when he spoke, even in Croke Park last year, about the motivation of getting back into that game against Kilmacud Crokes, and seems they're still tapping into his experience here.
It does. It seems so. He's been around the games all right, and it's hard to miss Mickey Moran when he lands into Park Esler. So people obviously noticed fairly quickly, and that's that has grown legs since then. How big his involvement is outside of match days, not sure, but he's certainly there on the day of the game. And as you say, there's been such a continuity in terms of the whole setup. Obviously, Conleth and Richie Thornton, joint managers, were sort of coaching last year. They both stepped up and sort of took it together. And in terms of this team selection, like you're looking at the team the last day, 14 of the team that played the All-Ireland final were starting again, and Eugene Brannigan was suspended. So they've had no turnover at all, which you kind of expect to a degree in a club team, but usually you'd see a wee change or 2 or 3 maybe, but they're literally working off pretty much 17 players. Anthony Morgan has come in and done well this year. Tiernan Fett has got a fair bit of football time, and they've a couple of young lads that have been coming off the bench. But they're working off. You look at them and they look almost exactly the same team. They're not playing really any different. Mm-hmm. They're built on what they're built on, and I suppose the whole continuity thing, Mickey's input, it probably feels like maybe it's not all that different from last year at all.
Yeah, I suppose no different to Ballygunner. They're coming in with the experience now of getting over the final line and actually winning an All-Ireland title last year. Glen go up against Carrigan of Antrim in Healy Park, 1:30 on TG Cahair on Sunday afternoon. I mean, you've said from the outset, all expectation is here at Cahair that Glen are going to advance.
It is. It would be hard to make a case otherwise when you look at Glen's last two performances. People, and I would have been among them, I would have felt that Slaughtneil had a much better chance in this year's Derry final than they had in last year's, because Paul Bradley had altered the way that Slaughtneil were playing, and particularly the way they were defending. They were setting up much deeper. We saw the evidence of last year. You go back to the Kilcoo semi-final last year with Glen. They learned an awful lot from Glen's win over St Eunan's up in Letterkenny, where St Eunan's dropped everybody back and made it so difficult, and Glen struggled to break it down. They struggled to break Kilcoo down, and that was the Slaughtneil template, that somewhere down the line they were going to meet Glen. They were going to make it hard to get broken down. Glen just made it look so easy again. And I think they've looked like a team over the last couple of weeks that they now look like a team that any way you want to throw it at them, they can play it. And they look like, even though Kieran McFall has been an enormous absence in one sense, they haven't really felt it. You're waiting in some sense for the day that you do feel it, or they do feel it, but it hasn't come yet. They look every bit as good as they did last year, even without him. And they look like they're a year down the line coaching ways in terms of dealing with whatever a team brings to them. They could have had more goals. Errigal played no sweeper, and really in the Ulster club, like I was sitting along the 21-yard line that they were defending, just in the stand that day, and Errigal were so wide open, but Glen were so good at attacking the space as well that it was frightening how often they could have got in for goals in the first half, particularly. So what Carrigan bring, Carrigan have tended to play open football in the last couple of years. They've had a few high-scoring games. Obviously, the Niamh Connell semi-final wasn't open. I think you would put a lot of that down to Niamh Connell and the way that they play, and Carrigan kind of mirrored it, and it became that kind of a game. But if Carrigan leave themselves exposed, they're in real trouble. If they drop everybody back, I don't see that they have the punch to hurt Glen the other way. It's hard to make a case for them.
Yeah, you've whet the appetite very nicely for this weekend. Cara, thanks a million for joining us.
No bother, thank you.
Looking forward to those games this weekend. So a reminder of the fixtures that we are looking forward to. We've got that first of the Ulster Club Senior Football Semi-Finals at the Athletic Grounds on Saturday evening, 6pm. Enniskillen Gales of Fermanagh hoping to reach the Ulster Final for the first time in 20 years when they go up against the reigning All-Ireland champions Kilcoo of Down. Then on to Sunday, Ashton, we've got the Munster Club Senior Football Semi-Finals, 1pm start for Cairn O'Ralligs of Kerry against Éire Óg of Clare. At the same time, Clonmel Commercials, who knocked out Nemo in the last round very impressively up against Newcastle West of Limerick. That's at Semple Stadium at 1pm. We've got the Ulster Club Senior Football Championship semi-final replay, which is the first of the two games on TG Cahair, which you can watch on Sunday. Carrigan of Antrim against Glen of Derry. That one's in Omagh. At the same time, TG Cahair online for Naas of Kildare against Ballyhale Shamrocks at Croke Park. Leinster Club Senior Hurling semi-final. I think this one's intriguing because last year we were talking all year about Naas being almost too good for the Intermediate Championship, and I fancied them big time when they played against Shinrone in the quarterfinals a couple of Saturdays ago, and Naas duly delivered. Won very comfortably by double digits in the end. It's a huge step up for them though, to go from playing Intermediate and getting to Croke Park last year for your next journey to Croke Park to play against the 4 in a row chasing Ballyhale Shamrocks.
Unbelievable. Yeah, it really is. But what a story. And, you know, these are the stories from club that we love. And it's a massive jump for them. But look, we've seen it done. So, you know, you definitely wouldn't write them off. They're a great team. Yeah, Ballyhale, just something else. You know, they really are a great team. Coasting at the minute, I feel.
Don't know if TJ's going to be back. Didn't need him the last day.
Didn't need him the last day. Yeah, they'll be hoping he will be. And I know he'll absolutely want to be out there. But, yeah, they just feel like they're just finding their stride. You know, again, this time of year, they seem to just hit their peak, but they start a bit later, their championship in Kilkenny, so maybe it's good timing for them too. But yeah, it definitely wouldn't be right an ace off either.
No, Ballyhale still hurting from that All-Ireland final, their last game at Croke Park, which is that Harry Ruddle goal for Ballygunner to win the championship itself. Kilcoo Crokes still in with a hunt of winning a provincial double. They go up against St Mullins of Carlow. That's the second game, and that's on TG Cahair at 3:15. You've also got that Galway Senior Hurling Championship final replay, Loughrea up against the reigning champion St Thomas. That is at Pearse Stadium at 1 p.m. So a very busy weekend of Club Championship action to come. The Club Championship show here on OTB Sports is brought to you by AIB. You can watch back on demand on our YouTube or indeed on our Twitter, and also the podcast will be up soon on the OTB GEA stream. Ash, thanks a million. Looking forward to what should be a great weekend of action.
Yep, can't wait for it, Will. Thank you.
And we'll chat to you guys again at 10:30 next Wednesday.
The Club Championship Show on OTB in partnership with AIB. Proud sponsors of the Football, Hurling and Camogie All-Ireland Club Championships. #the toughest.